Hello, everyone. Welcome to Evil Asterisk Podcast with Jeannie
and Luis. Now, you might be wondering why it has this name. Well, it turns out that over the years, as we watch movies, usually horror movies, on a lot of streaming services, sometimes an evil asterisk would appear on screen. And what did you call it?
Why? Because we always watch movies with captions. It's cool to do that, actually, because you'll catch things that, even when you're watching something in English or in your native language, whatever that is, and you see a little asterisk appear, sometimes that happens when evil music is starting.
Or evil deeds.
Are
committed.
So we noticed that, and so we started naming the asterisk the evil asterisk.
Yes, every time you saw an asterisk, depending on what you're watching, you knew something horrible is about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because we named it that years and years
ago. So it would telegraph a lot of things. We thought it was fun. So that's why we've called the podcast Evil Asterisk.
Now, we just watched an Irish horror movie on Hulu.
Considered folk horror, by the way.
Interesting.
It's called You Are Not My Mother.
It's written and directed by Kate Dolan. And it might be one of her first movies, if not her first movie.
Yeah, it would be interesting to find that out. I will look that up.
Now, this is the non-spoiler section, so we are not going to spoil anything, or at least try not to. I probably will. And once we make the transition, we might have to come up with a little spoiler song to warn people that the spoiler section is incoming. Like, we're about to see if I get to a boss fight in the game.
Yes.
But for now...
We'll put it at the end.
For now...
Put it at the end.
Non-spoiler.
Yes. So this is non-spoiler. At the very end, we'll switch over, and we'll have a warning.
So, Jeannie, what did you think of You Are Not My Mother?
I'm a little mixed. I know that we're usually, we say thumbs up, thumbs down, yes, no. I lean towards saying yes, even though there was a lot of stuff in this that was convoluted. I had a lot of questions. I don't like having a bunch of questions, and they weren't necessarily logically answered during the viewing. So that would be my concern. I know you liked it more than I did. However, I must say that the direction was impeccable, and there definitely were a few scares for me, which we may include
a lot more than a lot of indie horror movies that try to be elevated and forget to scare their audience.
Exactly. There was a lot of this was very much about family, and as you could tell from the title. I should also mention what this is supposedly about.
Oh yeah, Jeannie, read the synopsis.
Okay, here's the synopsis. In a North Dublin housing estate, Char's mother goes missing. When she returns, Char is determined to uncover the truth of her disappearance and unearth the dark secrets of her family. So as you can tell, it's kind of a family horror drama. It's even considered a general drama in some instances, but it's folk horror.
The Hulu description seems to be a little different.
Interesting.
Because IMDb sometimes, I think the IMDb users contribute their synopsis. This is the
more,
official
though.
one. It's
this
it spoils more stuff.
Let's not say what it is then.
So we won't
don't
read it now
look at
because
Hulu.
Hulu's
when you go to
thing
Hulu
might be a little spoilerish.
When you go to Hulu to see it, don't read it. Have soft eyes.
Now, this movie came out in 2021, which at this point is almost 3 years ago.
And it's, let's not date our podcast.
Well, I am.
You could be hearing it at any time.
You could be hearing this in the year 3000.
Exactly. So, but it's a fairly short film and tightly directed. It was definitely tightly edited and directed. It's just pretty much an hour and a half. So, unusual for this day and age. And it was definitely intriguing, but like I said, I got a little caught up in some of the stuff that I found to be a bit illogical.
Okay, I will give my verdict now. I liked it more than Jeannie. Mm-hmm. Yes. I think it's very well directed, incredibly well acted, very atmospheric and scary. is just a little slower than some people might be used to. And as Jeannie said, the Irish folklore stuff, the Celtic pagan religion stuff, if you don't know anything about it, you will be completely lost. We knew some of it.
Yes.
We saw a number of Irish movies that talk about and things like that, and we
Yes.
kind of remembered some of it or most of it. But if you don't know anything about it, you will be confused, and you might. I know
We're
it's
gonna have
not
to
a real
cut that
spoiler.
out. That's gonna have to cut. We'll cut that out.
Fine.
For sure, for sure.
Fine.
So let's go again, and maybe you can talk about, in Irish folklore, you may have heard some stuff that is related to some of the topics that are brought up in this film, right? Yeah. Okay, but you may not fully understand what it means, and some of the stuff will be more obvious as you go through the movie, which is nice because it builds and then you kind of figure out what's going on. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is that toward the beginning of the film there's a scene in the school that the main character goes to, and it made me think of liminal spaces. Not necessarily in terms of hallways and turning corners, although that is somewhat explored in the film, but it's the way that sort of the stark look with slats on the windows, and that also there's the pallets that they mention. They mention pallets a lot, which a lot of people don't necessarily know what that means, but those are boards with slats in them, wood. And I thought it was really interesting, and I mentioned it while we were watching. I said, oh, that makes me think of a liminal space. And guess what? Liminal spaces is actually mentioned later on in the movie,
Literally
which I thought was
called out by name.
really wild, and that's what kind of turned me a little bit to like the movie more than I had been liking it, because I love that topic.
And there's one thing about this one that's kind of interesting, is that it's really hard to place it in terms of time, in time period.
Right.
If you look at the cars will tell you that it's basically present day, like late 2010s, early 2020s or something. But they have a TV from the 70s in the house.
Yes.
They have a transistor radio from the late 60s, maybe. And
the clothing
it's
was
very
a little
dreary.
off.
The clothing looks off. So I think that contributes to this feeling of this is not quite real. It's not our reality necessarily.
And that's not a spoiler. It's just something that you're sort of thinking about. It's an aesthetic. Yeah. Let's just call it an aesthetic.
If you're out of place. Out of
time,
out of place. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And that definitely pervades the whole thing. And also, culturally, it's set on, as they say, a housing estate. If I'm not mistaken, a housing estate is like a low-income area,
the projects,
from
maybe?
but it's not. It's one level above the projects, I think.
Right.
Because the projects are like big buildings, nondescript with tiny apartments.
And it was interesting to see the students. We weren't sure what the socioeconomic situation was there, but it felt like they were maybe they were somewhat poor, or at least the main character's family felt that way. And not all of them, but it was very cloistered, enclosed. If you felt like you were isolated in this what seemed like a very small town, and everybody knew every history about
all the families knew each other,
although they were not necessarily friendly with each other. It was a lot. There's a lot of dysfunction, and it's not just about a dysfunctional family, it's about a dysfunctional community.
The school itself,
everything felt
everybody has issues, everybody's on meds,
they mentioned that a few times. So I guess part of another thing that was really confusing to me and made me not give it a complete hearty thumbs up was and again, I think this is not necessarily a mistake in the filmmaking and in the script. I think it might have been intentional, is that the relationships in the family were unclear. So there's what appears to be the grandmother, and then she mentions, this is my son, so we're thinking, okay, that's her son, therefore is that the father of the main girl? Because there's a girl She has her mother, and then she's her grandmother. And then all of a sudden this other character shows up, and the grandmother says, "This is my son." I'm thinking, and then that particular character says, "Your mother," to the, instead of saying mom or my wife or whatever. And it just felt like no one really was related to each other, which was really strange. So you weren't really sure, is that the uncle? Okay, I guess that's the uncle. What is his life like? You really don't know. And those were the kinds of character development things that sort of threw me a little bit. But at the same time, I think I was won over by as Louise said, the great acting. I felt impeccable direction.
It is.
But there were some, I would say
doing
there were
so much with so little.
Story problems. I would say there were a few
Yeah.
story and character problems, which comes into play for the general theme of the title of the movie, "You Are Not My Mother." Okay, so that gives you an idea of what the movie's about, but it's also, this is dysfunctional. The mother's acting strange. Is, the feeling that you might have of, a dysfunctional family where there's a girl who's a coming of age story, right? And she's feeling alienated, not just from her family, but from society. She's bullied in school. So there's a lot of this feeling of alienation.
Yeah.
And her mother, as is acting unusual. Her mother, I think, has a history of depression.
Even the grandmother is not completely normal either.
No,
Yeah.
and she feels like she's falling back into this issue she had before the mother.
Yeah.
And so that's why "You Are Not My Mother." So this whole metaphorical idea of not feeling close to your own parents.
The mother starts the story basically, and it looks like a deep depression. So it's not like the mother starts all smiles and being a totally functional person.
So we never really see the mother as being a normal human being. And then I don't know what happened, and maybe this was something you heard. Where was the father? Because clearly
they never said a word about it.
Guy is not I don't
There's
think
nothing.
this guy's the father. He's like the uncle.
Oh yeah, the mother said that she was really young when she had her.
Okay,
she
so
said
maybe
something
there was
like that,
never.
but that was it.
Yeah, the father was never in the picture.
Yeah.
So to speak.
No, I don't know. Is there anything else we can talk about that's non-spoilerish at this point?
I think the issue of the being bullied, where she's bullied unmercifully by this small group of these girls. Basically, there are 3 girls. One boy shows up at some point, but that's later in the movie. But I think it's basically these 3 girls, and they're just really brutal to her. She's such a target.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I can understand because I was bullied as a child. So I see that and I'm like, oh my gosh,
I was
having
too,
to
yeah.
live through. Yeah. But as a girl, because this is the main character, having to live through that is really scary.
It's even worthy of a spoiler alert. No, sorry.
No.
It's not a spoiler
No
alert.
spoiler alert.
It's not that. It's, wait a minute. I'm forgetting the term. When you're cautioning about a theme, a trigger alert.
Oh.
That's what it is.
Oh,
Okay.
sure. We should tell people that there
is-
could be a trigger for some.
This is a major trigger for bullying if you have experienced that when you're younger or if you're currently experiencing it.
Yes, it's pretty brutal and upsetting.
Because like Jeannie said, brutal is the word for it.
Yeah.
It's not, we didn't necessarily see a lot of like physical violence. It's more the psychological aspect, which in a way sometimes it's worse. So just fair warning there.
And I will say, and this is not a spoiler, but I will say that there are issues where some questions are left unanswered, and there are some, which is I would say to the film's credit, where you're saying, I wonder if this is what's going on. It wasn't fully answered, but that didn't bother me because then it's a nice conversation. And Louise and I haven't had that conversation yet.
Not at all.
We both have our little theories and thoughts, and we kind of threw a few things in when we were watching it. But I think in the spoiler section, we're going to
we should maybe come up with a little spoiler song now.
No.
Because
Spoilers.
watch out for the spoiler. It's coming to get you. We're going to give you 5 seconds till spoilers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. All right.
Okay, now
Spoilers.
let's talk about spoilers.
So, Jeannie, why don't you tell me
Well,
what you want to know.
okay, so you mentioned, we, bleeped it out, but okay, the theme of this film, and I'm just going to take a little time for those of you who are still listening. Don't listen. If you don't want a spoiler, goodbye.
Okay, they're gone now.
All right. The theme of the film, and it's kind of evident in the title, is the idea of the changeling. And we've seen that in many other movies. It could be part of Irish folklore. I'm sure it is. We haven't done any research on anything. Yes. We didn't even know what we were watching before we watched it. So
you went in completely blind.
We try to do that.
I didn't even read the description.
Nothing. We try to be very careful with that.
Yeah.
So if we look like we don't know what we're talking about, it's because we're going in with a blank slate. Okay. We didn't even research anything before we talked to you. So that is the concept. And I guess we should talk a little bit about what happens, at the beginning of the film. There's a situation where a person with a limp, which I thought was very important, is taking a child, presumably away from someone else, and actually wheeling it into the woods, putting it into an enclosed circle, and that ends up being fire.
Well, she said it was the baby that had been replaced.
That's not a robo baby.
Looks real to me. We didn't know at the beginning, but it's explained as if later it's a baby who's not really a baby, it's a changeling.
Right. So
she was taking to be to a fire.
But that's the beginning of the movie, and I think it's important to indicate we don't know what this means yet. So at the beginning of the movie, we get this person with this limp taking the baby into this wooded area and then presumably setting fire to the baby. We don't see the baby, catching, but there's certain things that we don't see, so we're left to assume, okay? Yeah. And then later on, the grandma has a limp. We, realize that the grandma looks a lot like the person. Blah, blah. Yeah. And we're like, okay, what baby was taken in there then? Oh!
What?
She's limping.
Yeah.
She's limping. She's got a cane.
Oh my God.
And when she started limping across, she reminded me of the person at the beginning. Sorry. I think we're supposed to know that.
Okay.
I don't think it's a spoiler.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's the grandma. So it's not the grandma's daughter that she took. And it seems weird. But okay. So that's part of what we find out, we kind of uncover as we're watching the movie. And so the reason why it's a little convoluted for me is that there's basically two changelings. There's what appears to be the original baby changeling,
which is off screen.
Which is off screen, and it is presumably the protagonist who ends up supposedly
being retrieved.
Yeah, supposedly successfully retrieved, and that's part of the.
Well, let's talk about the whole changeling thing first, because maybe you're not familiar with it. Now, we've seen a few movies that talk about changelings, right? Mm-hmm. And the basic idea is that they come in the middle of the night and they take a baby.
Who's they?
The creatures from the other side. I don't know what they are. Yeah. Forest beings. Fairies.
Yeah.
It's the fairies.
I think so.
So they come and they take the baby.
Fairy folk.
And instead of just taking a baby, or maybe even a woman, or maybe even a man, it doesn't matter who it is. Instead of just taking that person and keeping it and leaving nothing in its place, they replace it with a changeling. So if a perfect copy of that person, that's not really real. What happens is that the changeling can stay in the human world for too long, because if it sits for too long, they start to decompose or change or whatever. So we need to understand this concept, that something is taken, and then the fake one stays. Yeah. Now the family needs to figure this out early enough, and the rituals and ceremonies they can do
to reverse it,
to retrieve the original, to either kill the changeling or somehow shoo it away and get the real one.
And fire is involved.
And fire is a big part of it.
It's part of it. So at the beginning, that was a ritual that was done once it was determined, and we find out later in the film, it was determined that the mother, so there's the three generations. There's the grandmother, the mother, and the protagonist, who is basically this young girl who, I don't know if she's in middle school or high school. She looks young, maybe 14, 15, maybe. Okay. So what had happened in the past is that the mother had wandered off with her baby. And this is part of, I think, the original depression, right?
Yeah.
She would go through these episodes, depressive
So
episodes.
maybe there was already something going on there,
Yeah,
and
so
then
there's a
at some
medical
point
issue.
they took the baby.
And she comes back without the baby. And so the grandma's like, okay. And somehow they find the baby down by the river, which I thought was funny. We don't see this. This is off screen.
Yeah.
Baby is down by the river. This
Smiling.
is a discussion. This is what grandma tells
The
her
tale.
granddaughter at one point. She reveals what actually happened. Okay. So down by the river, baby is smiling. Which is kind of weird, right? She realizes it's not the actual child. She puts it in a carriage. She brings it to the woods, which is what we see at the beginning of the film. Sets the fire. Apparently sets fire to the child. And then it's swapped back somehow. Now, that's the part that is somewhat unclear to me. Why, and here's an important element visually in the film, is that the protagonist, the girl, she has what she's been calling a birthmark on her face, but apparently it's really a scar
from fire.
Fire, but then, okay, so does that mean that when the change was reversed, she got burned? How did she get burned?
When the babies got swapped, the fake one disappeared and the real one came in and got a little burn.
It got a little burn, and
I
then
think that's what
grandma
the movie
grabbed it quickly.
That's what the movie's implying, I think.
It's a little
but
off.
Anyway,
I don't know what
I think
that
we
means.
should probably talk about kind of what happens, but very briefly.
Yeah.
So the mother eventually disappears. They find her car with groceries, and the police is looking for her. No one knows where she is. Then she just kind of shows up, and as she shows up, she starts to get weirder and weirder. And the girl in the beginning has this nightmare that's really scary, and we kind of figured out, yeah, it's a nightmare, it's not real, blah blah blah. Eventually, it starts happening kind of for real, quote unquote. So you see this process that the mom is getting stranger and stranger.
At the beginning of the film, after we see this situation in the woods with the burning, and we're assuming that something was happening, some ritual. The main plot that Luis was talking about is the mother disappearing. But before the mother disappears, which I think is important, she's acting like a zombie. She's driving her. She's clearly messed up.
Good point.
She's saying, "Oh, I can drive you to school," even though she's still in bed. The little girl is like, "I'll walk." She doesn't really want to risk. So something's been already going on, and that is also part of the confusion, I think, where already the mother's strange. We don't know why she's strange. We assume that she's depressed.
Right?
Well, we make assumptions.
Yeah.
See, that's another thing, is that she's also a changeling later. It's like that's the part that's very confusing. So we have a situation where the protagonist was swapped for a changeling and then supposedly reversed, and now she's the original child. But then we also find out that the mother, who's already acting like a zombie, already acting weird, driving her kid to school, and then disappears after that, and at that point is replaced with a supposed changeling, now an adult changeling, not a child changeling.
Exactly. Yeah.
Different idea. And she's getting worse and worse and worse. And we think, oh, she's getting off her meds. We find out another weird subplot is that the uncle apparently has been taking her lithium
and selling it,
and selling it, or taking it himself, which is also strange. Okay, so my concern is that it wasn't clear that this woman was a somewhat normal human being and then was swapped and then became strange. To me, that's more dramatic. We never see the mother as being a normal mother, which is much scarier, in my opinion. It's like an Invasion of the Body Snatchers type of trope, where you've got this quote-unquote normal family, and all of a sudden it's abnormal. And you're like, what's happening?
You know what? I think the reason they didn't do it that way is because they want us to possibly see this movie as if all of the supernatural stuff could be in the girl's head, because you could see that at the end when they're having a bonfire and the zombified version of her mom approaches, it could be that the other teenagers don't see that.
What Luis is talking about is later in the movie at the climax
when she's turning back into a
she's
changeling or something
continues, yeah, she's this whole thing about her being replaced. Whatever she's replaced with is what she is now falling into her new
or
skin.
previous, yeah.
Well, this is the changeling version of her mother, which is this creature. So she's turning into this creature during the end and during the climax, where they try to lure her. She and one of the bullies who ends up becoming her friend, another interesting subplot, they set this whole bonfire up to lure the mother, who's actually, they realize, the changeling, to lure her back into this bonfire, and therefore remove reverse, just like the beginning. It's like a bookend.
Yeah.
Just like they did at the beginning.
Reverse / reveal, I guess. Because she's like, we can test her.
Right.
With the fire.
And how did they know this? Well, there was some interesting stuff that happened. Not only did Granny tell the protagonist about what's going on, but also one of the bullies, who becomes the friend of the main character, Char. I haven't been mentioning her name this whole time, and I really should have been. Charlotte Char. She has an interesting experience when she's visiting the home, Char's home. She's in the kitchen, and the ghost of her dead mother, which is also interesting. A lot of people have dead, relatives and broken families and stuff. She comes from behind, grabs her, and says, "Get out!" She needs to get out. Yeah. Leave this place now. Oh, she's being warned by her own mother.
Oh,
her own dead mother.
Oh my God.
There's a lot of folklore, I think, in the community. I think a lot of people in the community are familiar with various things that go on, and therefore it wasn't such a reach that she would come to the conclusion that because the mother's acting weird, her friend's mom, so to speak, Char's mom, that, she's a changeling. And why does she have this scar? And, why does the main character have this scar?
So
that could be because of something else that happened.
So in the end, in the bonfire situation, changeling version of mother goes into bonfire. Char attacks her with fire. Changing version burns or something. And in the end, the police is like, there's no body in the bonfire.
Right.
Blah,
and
blah,
then
blah.
And
then the mother comes waltzing in as its normal human self.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a big happy family somehow. Mm-hmm. And the uncle, who may or may not have been stealing lithium and had an overdose, it's fine.
I think he's just,
Grandma has been killed by the changeling, so Grandma's
gone.
kaput.
Grandma's gone.
Yeah. And it looks like they're moving. It's like, we're getting rid of this old house. Yeah, they're moving.
I'm just confused about whether or not, I'm just going to say it, why the main character, Char, why she has the thing on her face. Like, to me, are we sure that Char isn't the changeling?
She would have decomposed. She would have been, if she was a changeling, she would have decomposed.
Could it be that I don't know if the folklore allows for this, but could it be that it only happens after she matures and she becomes a woman?
I don't think
because
so.
It's weird. One of the things that's really strange is, why is all this stuff happening now? Why all of a sudden is the mother being replaced?
That's a really good point.
It just doesn't make any sense. Why do they want the child back?
Because
that's the point.
Why did the forest people, the fairies, suddenly decide that now they're really pissed off that the girl got exchanged? So now they're going to come back and take her mom.
Right.
So they can retrieve the girl and take her back in again.
It doesn't make any sense.
But that's one of the big problems.
These are the story problems that I have.
But now you know how this thing ends. And I noticed the thing about the house because the house looks more expensive than they can afford.
Right.
And I think it was the house that was built slash bought by the grandparents. I think they had money. And basically, that's why it's kind of in disrepair when we see the movie in present day, and they had an old television and an old radio.
Right.
So them selling the house and saying,
Okay,
we're done with old traditions,
we're
makes
done
sense.
with yes,
It makes sense.
yes, that
You know,
tradition aspect.
I
That's a
understood
really
that.
important
But
point.
what I wanted to talk about is a different way to do this movie, which I was really hoping would be the case. I had this idea in my head that it was the grandmother that stole a changeling youth and basically wanted to raise it as its own, and that's why they wanted to get it back. As if instead of the fairies stealing our children, we stole one of theirs.
No, that would be interesting.
I had that idea in my head at some
reverse
point.
that idea
Yeah.
and say, "Oh no, we've got to give the
Like
child back."
as if the mom was a changeling that the grandma
Right.
took from them, and then
Yes.
the mom had a daughter which was also not fully human,
Right.
and they're like, we need to bring them back.
Because they do seem different. Because the mom's already seems odd before she's changed. She's supposedly, swapped. And why, we don't know. Why now? And then the Shar, the main character, is also odd. She's a target. She's got the mark. She's, it's like Harry Potter, but on her cheek. It's almost like she's special and otherworldly, and she feels wise beyond her years.
Yeah.
And she's also a mark, as everybody, these girls bully her, and she's really smart. She does well in school. She's very focused on that. And also, I thought another thing that I thought was really interesting is even when the mother was clearly changing into something else, and you knew that she knew what was going on because of her nightmares and also just some visions, that she still gravitated toward her.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just say that's an allegory
Because the girl
for
was so
wanting-
tired of living that she might as well go live with the forest people.
You could say that's an allegory or a metaphor for wanting to be close to your mother no matter what. Even if your mom turns on you, if your mom just seems like an alien to you and is brutal or what, because there were some areas where she just went crazy and she actually hurt her daughter at one
she did.
point.
She pushed her against the wall.
And she still went against grandma. Grandma was trying to preserve and hold the quote unquote changeling mother, but the daughter didn't want her to do that. So you kind of wonder if there was some affinity between those characters.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting too. But that's actually part of what I liked about the movie, that it opens a bit up to interpretation, but then there's the stuff that felt illogical that I didn't like as much.
There's a way to read this movie where you say there's nothing supernatural. Grandma is crazy. Because grandma is crazy, the mother is depressive.
Yeah.
Right? Which means the
That's
daughter is
interesting.
troubled.
That's interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And when grandma dies and she's removed from the equation, mother gets better. Daughter stops seeing mother as a changeling. They sell the house.
But
Happily ever after.
grandma dies before the scene with the pyre, so to
I
speak,
know,
with
but I
the
think it's
wood.
related. Like the
And-
girl was still kind of seeing that at
but
some point. Yeah,
Grandma's
exactly.
already gone at that
I know,
point.
I know.
And she enlists the help of one of the girls to help her, and then she's stuck in there. And what I thought it was also interesting is she used a bully technique from one of the bullies in order to vanquish her changeling mother.
makes perfect
so
sense.
she is fighting against the changeling, and we see the changeling in its starting to be in its form. Its
Yeah.
original form. So I don't know. I mean, the grandma was already gone by then.
But you could see that she
so-
needed to process the death of her grandmother until she could deal with
Maybe.
deal with her fantasy of her mom not being
Maybe.
who she is. That's what the title of the movie
Yeah.
is.
I think
basically.
since we have so much to say about this too, and there was definitely an atmospheric element, I think that means that it's got to be more of a thumbs up because, even with all the, in my concern, were character development issues, especially with the uncle. I didn't even know what he was doing.
I would have cut him off the movie. I would have cut the
There's no
uncle
need
off.
for the uncle
Yeah.
unless you were just trying to do a misdirection and say like, who is this guy, and make you distracted from the fact that everything was messed up. It
We
didn't
needed
really work.
more about mom
fine
is
for the
kind of normal, and
multi-generational
then
women.
she turns. Yeah.
Yeah, the multi-generational women living in the same house aspect, which kind of interesting on its own. We didn't need the guy there.
Completely
Yeah,
unnecessary.
he was unnecessary. So I say that was a problem, and I say there were some story elements, some illogical elements, and I haven't even brought them all up, but that I found a little frustrating. But at the same time, I was scared to death in at least
You
two.
got her twice, I think.
Yeah. Oh my god. Oh, of course it's a dream. What?
Are you awake?
Ah!
Seriously.
I'm so scared. I can't help it. I can't help it.
I'm gonna take a guess.
But I get scared kind of easily, but I think it was very
You
effective.
did a good job with the creepiness.
I think it was very,
Yeah.
very effective. Oh, and I want to say the use of mirrors, which I thought, again, a directorial technique, which I thought worked really well. I love the aspect of they did this a lot where Shar was looking into her mother's room, and you weren't sure where the mother was because there were mirrors, so she could have been closer or further away. And then, the door would creak open. I love that. That was really well done.
Really effective. And going back to the boiling a little bit, I think the scene at the bonfire when her, changeling mother is hugging her and saying, "Come with me. Where we go, there's no pain. There's no
Right.
fear.
And
Your mom can't wait to see you." And I think it's an allegory about suicide and bullying. How someone was being bullied,
Right.
they feel at some point at their wits'
Pain.
end and desperate, and they
Right.
feel like suicide is the only way out. And you can see how the main character is tempted in that moment to just say, "Screw this all,
Right.
screw these bullies, screw my messed
Yeah.
up family life."
But she
I
did
just
have
wanted
the
to
one
stop.
bully that became her friend.
Maybe
which
that's
I
why
think
she didn't
helped,
do it.
Was her saving grace.
Maybe that one new friend
Yeah.
that saw her as a
Right.
person for the first time
Yeah.
in forever made a
Yes.
difference.
But she did win her mom, and she did get her mom in the end, supposedly.
Yeah.
We see it as on the surface as a happy ending, and we assume that's what it
Yeah,
was.
it was, I
meant to
think,
be.
as a happy ending.
Yeah. All right.
I would have
So-
loved to have the twist, but
Of course. But
But-
we can put that twist in our minds because
Yes.
that's why we have a lot to talk about because of
yeah.
the stuff that was left unanswered, which I think then brings our own twist.
The
into
fact
it.
that there's so much talk about it, it means it's
Yeah.
probably a good movie.
I would say it was very effective. I will go back to saying that I found a little character and story problems, but ultimately I will give it a yes or a thumbs up or however we're doing
Maybe we should
this.
do a rating that's like, 2 thumbs down, 1 thumb up, 1 thumb down.
Well, we do that.
And 2
we
thumbs
call
up.
it either yes, no, or neutral when we put together our stuff. And then when I said 2, I meant that I got really scared twice, which is actually nice. I don't know if Luis got scared at all.
Nah,
though.
it takes more than to scare me
Yeah,
than this.
if we can get him to cry and scream, which he does sometimes. He did in
I
the
will
movie
scream.
theater once.
Yeah.
He sounded like
I-
a little girl in the
I
movie
screamed
theater.
in Event Horizon and scared the entire 2 rows in the theater.
I think it
So,
was what was it? White Noise. You freaked out on that?
White Noise, yeah, the
Yeah.
woman in black.
The woman in black. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There were some. Weird,
I would
weird
definitely
movies.
scream if it gets me good, but
Okay.
it needs to be more supernatural, I guess.
So, title: You Are Not My Mother.
Yes.
Wonderful. I think we could recommend it, but with some caution.
With caveats.
Caveats, exactly.
It is a
We
little
talked
slow.
about- yes.
It is a little confusing.
Yes. But it's.
You
I
know?
think it's definitely worth seeing.
Very
right.
much worth seeing. I would say 2 thumbs up on my end
Let's
of
do
things.
it. Well, that's what it is.
You know?
Both of us.
For sure. And
You're only going to give it 2? I think you mean 2
I
thumbs
only
up.
have
from-
2 thumbs.
Oh, I see what you're doing.
See?
So you're going to say 4 thumbs up? No, I think we
No,
just...
2 thumbs up
let's
on
just
my
say-
end, but Jeannie agrees, so it's 2 thumbs up for us.
Exactly.
Exactly.
All right. So 2 thumbs up total.
And 4 feet.
Not 1 thumb up.
and
okay?
4 feet and 6
I think we
necks.
only say thumbs up or thumbs down or neutral.
I like to say 2 thumbs up.
But that means from both of us.
Then it's 4. Oh my
No,
god.
we don't do it
This
that
is
way.
getting very
That's
confusing.
not how we do it. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be standard here. Trying to be standard.
So we're just going to
Okay.
say thumbs down,
No.
1 thumb up,
No.
1 thumb down.
Okay, let's...
And then 2 thumbs up. No,
Okay.
oh shit.
So it's either neutral, thumbs up, or
Neutral
thumbs
is
down.
so boring.
Okay, fine. we'll say one thumb up, one thumb down. But we're not there yet. We haven't gotten there yet. We are okay with this one. All right?
Yes.
With caveats, as you said. All right. We've lingered too long, so now we'll have to bid you adieu.
Unless it's
Adieu.
a changeling spoken to you right
Adieu.
now, and it's really not us. So watch out.
Bye for now. Oh! That's that weird thing.
Oh my God.